Welcome to One World Countless Story podcast with me, Selena Novello. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, I interviewed Felicia, and she is such a light. She is so amazing. We talked about her career as a news anchor. We talked about the demandingness of that career. We talked about perfectionism. We talked about how she started her own business during COVID. And we've talked about so many challenges that she overcame, like how she was called names when she was little and she felt like she wasn't enough. And she goes through how that changed and how she surrounded herself with people who lifted her up. So I'm really, really excited today to have Felicia on and share her story. So let's get into it.
All right, my name is Felicia Yap, and I live in Calgary, Alberta, but I've called many places in Canada my home. I've lived in Lethbridge. I've also lived in two places in Saskatchewan, Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and Regina, and I've lived in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Fredericton. So I've lived all over Canada, and I've been so blessed to experience all the wonderful things that the country has to offer in different parts of the country. So I'm really excited about being back home. I was away from home for 7 years, and I love storytelling, as I mentioned. So it took me a while to figure out that that's the path I should go on. But before I started my own business, I was a broadcast journalist, and I worked for CTV for 7 years, and now I've returned home and I am now an entrepreneur. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story in a nutshell.
That's so awesome. I think it's so cool how you've been able to go all over Canada. And I think Canada's so beautiful. And sometimes us as Canadians, we're like, let's go to Europe or the US or somewhere else. But I think there's a lot of beauty here as well. So that's cool that you were able to experience that. So let's kind of go into your childhood. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up where you were?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. It's one of the biggest cities in Canada, but even when I was growing up in a pretty multicultural community, I still felt and faced a lot of racism. So that was it was a big challenge growing up, not just a little bit. And it really formed who I was. Mm-hmm. So people would make fun of the way I looked. They would call me Ching Chong, and they would play with their eyes. They would call me a dragon, and they were scared of me. And I was just a sweet little girl growing up. Yeah. And that was a big part of my childhood, and it really formed my character. So even though I faced that, it really taught me to treat people with empathy and compassion. Mm-hmm. And also another thing growing up, when I wanted to be in the news, I met with a news director who said, whatever you can do, try to do anything that will get you more experience on camera. So when you walk into a room, you can own the room. So he said, try acting, try modeling. And so I did. I thought, okay, I'm going to go find a talent agent. And I went to downtown Calgary, found a talent agent, and this model agent looked at me up and down, and she said, there's nothing special about you. Which she knows what the trends are, but it was really hard to hear. And that was her truth. And she knows what's popular. And I just wasn't popular. But even still, I got hired as a commercial model. I got paid as one. But even though I got paid, I never made the campaigns. So other people in the campaigns did, but because I look different, the color of my skin, I don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. I'm honing in on it. I just didn't make the campaign. So that really it was really important for me to go through that, because after that, I really realized that I don't want to wait for someone to say that I'm good enough.
Right.
And that's why I love telling other people's stories and making them feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
Because growing up, I really loved the news. And the only person that looked like me on the news was someone in the States, Connie Chung. So I really admired her because someone who looked like me was successful. And that's why I do what I do. I help people be seen and be heard through video. And that's so important for me because growing up, I didn't even feel beautiful until my 20s. So I really want my two girls, they're 3 and 5, I want them to know that they are beautiful just as they are, and they are worthy, and their stories are worthy of being heard.
Yeah, that is such a great message too. And I'd love to dive in a little bit more about, how you were treated at school. And you had said that was one of your really big challenges and it shaped you in a lot of ways. Could you expand on that and tell us, how it really affected you?
Absolutely. So I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My parents are immigrants, blue collar immigrants from Singapore. So the only clothes I would ever get were at Christmas time, and my aunt who would buy me clothes at the beginning of the school year. And then I would get hand-me-downs from my cousins. So I never looked a certain way, and I love to volunteer. So I was never a popular kid in school, and I got made fun of. I was called the ugliest girl in school, which is unfortunate. And then I remember being called the fat Chinese girl. And so all of that really shaped how I felt about myself. And so I always thought about playing small. I didn't want to raise my voice and speak my mind because I wanted to just blend in. I didn't want more attention than I already had.
Right.
So that was something that really affected the way I viewed myself. But as I got older, I realized you can change the narrative that you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredibly powerful. So only when I started to really value who I was as a person did I feel beautiful, did I feel valuable, and I felt like my voice is worthy of being heard. And one thing that really stood out to me, and that's one of the reasons I got into broadcasting, is when I was 12 years old, I had this amazing teacher, Mr. Randy Peters, and he had a background in radio broadcasting. And as part of his class, we had to stand up and read. And so I would read to the class. And whenever I read, the rest of the class kept quiet. And at one point, he pulled me aside and he said, Felicia, I think you should get into broadcasting. And then he had a parent-teacher interview with my mom. And he's like, I really feel like Felicia has something. She should get into broadcasting. And because he believed in me,
yeah,
it made me believe in myself. And so he planted this seed in my mind that, I'm good at something. And that was really, really amazing. So if you have those role models in your life who really believe in you, it can just change your life for the better. And I'm so grateful for him because he really did change the trajectory of my life. And after that, I just really believed in myself, and I love public speaking. And then I decided to go down that path. But it was a little bit of a convoluted path because I also thought I should get into medicine because I did really well in school.
Okay. So what I hear, which I love, is that you had a role model that kind of helped you switch the flip, right? So was there anything else that kind of really made you change that narrative? Because you said that you hadn't really truly felt beautiful till you were 20 or in your 20s. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and how you got your mindset to change, because it was awful. It sounds like you were being called these awful names. And I just it breaks my heart to hear that. I wish people were a little bit more kind, but it's made you stronger in who you are today. So I think that's a beautiful thing. But I'd love to hear when it all shifted.
Okay, so this happened in my early 20s, and I really wanted to be in a relationship. So I had this boyfriend, and it wasn't a very good relationship, but I was in love with this guy, and he didn't really value me. He would pinch my arms and say that I have to work out. And it was just not a good relationship, unfortunately. And it didn't end well. I'll leave it at that. It did not end well. And he found somebody else. And so I was really crushed. I was really, really crushed. And when I had friends in school that said, Felicia, you have to strut and you have to believe in yourself. And after that encouragement, I really looked at all the things, all the good qualities that I have. And I really started to believe in it. And I thought, you know what? Someone is going to value me, but I have to first value myself. And so I started taking care of myself. And I just one day started feeling really good about myself. And that really, really helped. And now I'm in a really good relationship with someone who really values me and never comments about the shape I'm in. He just tells me I'm beautiful. So I'm really grateful. I really believe that that internal transformation really led me to somebody who also finds beauty in me. And that was so, so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And were these friends from high school or were they in like university friends?
They were my university friends and my friends in post-secondary at SAIT. So when I was going to broadcast news school, that everything changed. I really started believing in myself. And that's when I was really focused on trying to pursue my goal and my career in broadcast news. So I was very hyper-focused.
Right.
And clear picture of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to become.
That's awesome. And you also talked a little bit about criticism that you were getting from others, and it was pretty harsh. How did you deal with that? And I know you had said that it was pretty hard for you, but you kept going, which is amazing. So how did you deal with criticism from others?
Well, some of the biggest criticisms I've had were people not liking the sound of my voice, even though my old teacher said, Felicia, I think you have something. You got to pursue broadcast news. A news director told me, you got to change your voice or you're not going to make it. And then my aunt told me, Felicia, you're never going to make it into television news because you're Asian and there's not many Asians on TV, which was the truth. And what really made me keep going is I wanted to prove them wrong and I wanted to prove myself right, that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took that news director's advice and I worked on my voice. I didn't just leave it as it is. I actually took his advice because I knew he had that experience in the industry I wanted to break into. And I did a lot of vocal exercises with coaches and I practiced every day. Anything I could get my hands on, whether it was a physical newspaper or a storybook, I would just read it. And I would read it cold to practice this craft because it was going to be a huge part of my career. And for my aunt, I knew she had that view and that was her truth. And she just wanted to take care of me and she wanted me to have a bright future. So I understood that. But I just knew what I wanted to do. And I would do anything to break into the industry and pursue my dreams because that's what I wanted. And that's what made me happy was this storytelling.
Yeah, that's so empowering. And I just love how I think a lot of the times it's not the best thing to do, but we all do it. We all want to prove someone wrong that has told us, you can't do that. I know for me, I was the type of person that's like, they're like, well, you'll never succeed. You're just going to float through the school system. And I was like, nah, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to go above and beyond and try to prove you wrong. And I know we're supposed to do things for ourselves, but I think at the end of the day, that is another really big motivator that we have. I'd be interested to hear your process of your schooling and then how you got your first job.
Absolutely. So I graduated from high school as my valedictorian of my high school, and then I got into university. So I was really blessed. My parents had just filed for bankruptcy. We didn't have money for university. So I worked super, super hard in high school, and I was very blessed to get full scholarships to university. So that was a really, really great blessing for me. And then I really flip-flopped because part of me wanted to be a broadcast journalist, a big part, but I had all these external factors, my parents, my external family, and other people. Even my school counselor said, why are you wasting your time trying to be a journalist? You have so much going for you, so smart. You should go into medicine. And so I thought, well, I do really love science and I love helping people. So maybe medicine is the right route. And so for 3 years in university, I flip-flopped between communications courses and science. And I ended up in my last year switching to biological sciences, thinking maybe I should be a doctor. And I took my MCAT and I got an interview at the University of Alberta for medicine. But I really think there was another plan for me, because a few days before this big interview at U of A, I got laryngitis, the worst laryngitis of my life. And I seriously could not talk. So someone else had to call for me and ask, what if Felicia misses her interview? And they said, if she misses her interview, she loses her spot. And so I went to Edmonton, so incredibly sick. And I had this long interview, and I was just not feeling it. And I didn't get in. I found out later I didn't get into medicine. But at the same time, I had applied as a backup to SAIT's radio television broadcast news program. And it was my backup. My friend who I'd volunteered with at New TV, which is a campus-based television community, told me that I should apply to SAIT's RTBN's course. And I thought, should I do it? And he said, you have a lot of talent, you should try. So I applied last minute to SAIT's program, like 2 minutes to spare. I remember running towards the office and handing in my application, asking, did I make it? And the receptionist said, you just made it. Thank goodness. And so I got an interview for that program, and then I got in. And so broadcasting was really my backup. But I also remember this, and this was a very important moment. I remember getting that letter for my interview at U of A medical school. And the first thing that popped in my mind was, what if you never get to try broadcasting? So internally, I think I knew that that's really what I wanted to try. So whether it was self-sabotage or just divine intervention, this is just the way it happened. So I didn't get into medical school, but I got into broadcast news. And for a while, I wasn't sure maybe this is the route I should go to, but everything just fell into place. I got hired right out of school for my first job at CTV as a video journalist in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And at the time, I had never heard of Yorkton, but I knew if I wanted to get a job in the industry that I wanted to be in, the competition is so fierce, especially for those entry-level positions. If I wanted to make it and if I wanted to get good, I needed to start in a small center. And most of my classmates never left Calgary. They decided they wanted to try to stay in where their family was or started a big station. And that's not always going to happen unless you really are super good or you luck out in a position open. So I went to a place that was far away from home, far away from everybody I loved and everything I was used to a place that I knew not a single soul. And it was probably one of the best things I could have done for myself. And when I got there, I was so lonely. I would cry at night and I just would miss my family and my friends. And I had just started dating my boyfriend at the time. So it was a really tough time for me, but I learned so much. I learned about storytelling and I learned about being accountable to the community you're telling stories to. That's incredibly important. So important. And I learned how to be a good videographer. I shot all my stories myself, and I did farm stories and sports stories and crime stories and politics. I covered so much, and I got so many opportunities in a small market that I would never have gotten in a big market because I was one of the only people there. So I got to ride in helicopters and private planes, and I led the procession of the Yorkton exhibition in the first chuck wagon in this parade, and it was amazing. I got to do so many cool things because of starting small. And I think there's no shame in starting small because you can make your mistakes in a small center and people are more forgiving.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just very blessed to be there because people were so nice to me and so kind. It was a culture shock because they weren't used to seeing someone that looked like me, but they were still so welcoming. And when I did make mistakes, they just were really nice about it. I remember this happened. I was anchoring and at CTV Yorkton, it used to be that it was pre-recorded for the lunchtime show because in the morning we'd have to go cover a news story as well. So I would pre-record the news show earlier in the morning. And I remember there was just so many technical problems with one section, and the director would keep coming out, sorry, we have to redo it again. We have to redo it again. And I think it happened 3 times. And on the 4th time, I made a mistake and I said, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Let's just do it again. And I laughed it off. And then I actually got to watch that newscast. So I was sitting at my desk watching the newscast and I saw myself pop up say, I screwed up, let's do it again. I was mortified that went to air. But the director came out and said, I'm so sorry that happened. And you know what? That happens. And I totally forgave her, but I was so worried that I would get so many calls or emails to the station that, oh, that Felicia really messed up. But not a single person wrote in, not a single person called, and they were totally fine with that mistake. So starting small was a good thing for me. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned from those mistakes, and it was a great training ground for myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have so many questions off of this. So the first one is that you said there was a lot of external people, trying to tell you or advise you on what you should do because you had the good grades, you had the potential. So I'm wondering, how did you deal with those external forces, I guess?
It was really hard. I remember sitting in the University of Calgary's a program counselor office, and they get to decide, like, your course counselors which area to go to. And I remember being just starting my 4th year and just bawling. And I felt so bad for that counselor because she was there to help me with my courses, and she ended up being a therapist because I was so conflicted whether I should get into medicine or I should try to pursue broadcast news. It was really difficult because my family, they're immigrants. They didn't have a lot of money, and I have to say, a lot of Asian families want their kids to get into these professions like medicine or becoming a lawyer or an engineer or an accountant. That's the dream job because that provides that security that they didn't necessarily have. Right. And I have to say, my parents, they sacrificed so much to get to this country. They're not well educated, but they have done so well for themselves. And I'm so grateful to have such wonderful parents like them. So I didn't want to let them down. That was really hard. And I remember when I didn't get into medical school, my dad saying, how come nobody wants my daughter? And that was so heartbreaking. So sad to hear him say that because I didn't want to disappoint my dad.
Yeah.
That was really hard. And I did really well in school and even in university. So it was hard for me because I knew that I had the potential, but I don't think I was ready for medicine. I know a lot of doctors, and my husband's a doctor now. So I know what they have to go through to be in their line of work. And at the time when I got that interview for U of A, I don't think I had the life experience that I needed to necessarily be as good of a doctor, as some people who go into medicine do. So I really had to follow my gut. I had to follow my heart, and it was hard, but in a way it worked out because I didn't get into medicine and I got into broadcast news, and I have no regrets. Oh my gosh, what I have been able to experience being a journalist has just changed my life for the better. I would never have gotten to do so many cool things. Interview Academy Award winners. I got to be super close to the Queen of England covering her Diamond Jubilee tour in Halifax. And interviewing amazing savants, scientists, getting behind the scenes of big events. It's incredible. I have no regrets the way my life has turned out.
That's so awesome. And then your big message that I got from that is that it's okay to make mistakes. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that. As you said that, you were just in a smaller place and you just made lots of mistakes, but you grew and learned so much. So I want to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Absolutely. I made so many mistakes, Selena. Oh my gosh. Even on the anchor desk, I've said some pretty embarrassing things to myself. I remember being in Halifax. This was a larger market, and I was reading a sports script cold. and I hadn't covered it yet. So I didn't have a chance to check with the person who wrote that specific sports script. I wrote everything else except for sports, how to pronounce beau séjour. And so I said bourgeoisie. And I was so embarrassed after that. Oh my gosh. There's so many things that happen on live television that gets caught on live television, but you just have to roll with it. And hopefully if you have the grace and the experience, you can just keep rolling, because there's something called the chaos of the mind. When you screw up, everything snowballs and it can get worse and worse. So you have to learn how to pick yourself up. But mistakes are important, because that's when you really learn to be better. And I remember not making some of the deadlines that I had to as a video journalist. And that's incredibly difficult, because a whole production crew and the news anchors are waiting for that story to be in the lineup. And when it doesn't happen, it really throws a lot of things off. So everything has to work as a system and people depend on you. But sometimes with timing, it just doesn't work out. And you just have to learn to be better and faster at your job. Mm-hmm. And over time, I got really good at being fast. So I used to edit on tape to tape, which is these two video machines. You record your stories on like a tape instead of digitally, and you had two machines to record your one would read it and one would record the final video, and I could do a whole video, a news story, in 10 minutes, which is really fast. So you just get better at your craft the more you do it. And don't be afraid of making mistakes, because that's how you can really succeed. I don't really believe that you can succeed without having a lot of failures. And it makes the success so much sweeter when you have all those failures. You have to have that courage to get up and try again.
That's so awesome. And I think like what you've talked about is really, really important, because I feel like mistakes and failures are, they're starting to become more talked about and as a good thing, but there's a lot of like a negative connotation around them, at least I find. And so I think it's all about, speaking out like you are and normalizing it a bit. And that's how we grow. So I thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. My other question for you is, what was some of the challenges and the good parts about being in the public eye?
Challenges. I'll start off with that first. Okay. So challenges being in the public eye, some people already have made an assumption about you. Mm-hmm. And if you're a journalist, some people just don't like you just because of what you do. It comes with the job, and you have to understand not everybody wants press. Yeah. And it takes time to build that trust. So I totally get that. Mm-hmm. But some of the positives that come with it is you get to really see the kindness of people. And I remember being at the Halifax International Airport and waiting to come home and wanting to buy some lobster for my family. And the person who was working said, "I know who you are. I love you. I'm going to give you my family and friends discount." And I said, "Are you sure? I don't know if that's right." And they insisted, and people are just so kind. And I remember people, I don't like to take gifts, but a woman came out of a Chapters Indigo and said, "We watch you all the time. I want you to have this mug." And so she bought me a really nice mug. And just being on the street and people saying, "We love you. You're our favorite news anchor." And it was so touching. I love the Maritimes. They really welcomed me home. It was my home for news, and it was just my home. People there are so lovely. And I have family back there now too, because my husband is from the East Coast. So the Maritimes has like a very special place in my heart. I really love the people there.
That's awesome. And so with your career in news, what would you say some of the biggest hurdles are? Because I've heard that it's a pretty demanding career. So I'd love to hear a little bit more specifically about that as well.
Yes, especially now, there's always cutbacks. So video journalists are expected to do a lot. I'll start off with the video journalist work. So as a video journalist, it's easier now, but when I started, I had to carry 50 pounds of equipment, and I'm only about 100 pounds. So it was a lot of weight. And I would have a lot of bruises and injuries from just carrying that weight. And you're under tight deadlines to get all the footage, all the interviews, write your story, voice it, and then send it into the station that you work at. So it's very demanding. And then as a news anchor, there's a lot of challenges too, because if you work at not a huge station, you're expected to do a lot of the writing. So when I worked at CTV Atlantic, I had the job of 6 people. As the morning show co-host, I also was the field producer for the show. I did the news updates for the national updates for the news as well. And then, so I would have to book all the interviews live during the show, which was really challenging. And when I did police checks and fire checks, the show would be going on. And when I wasn't on, I'd be calling people and writing furiously. So, and I would have 4 newscasts, live newscasts, plus cut-ins where I'd have to go in and stand up as a co-host. And it was very demanding. And then I would have a half-hour show to produce by myself with very little help. But when I did get help, I was so thankful. It was wonderful. And then I would set up the live hits with the reporters and getting all fresh content. So I'm constantly looking at ways to freshen up my newscasts. And it was a lot of work. And then after that, I would also do a health story. So my days were very full, but I loved it. It was very stressful. Breaking news was my jam. It was so much fun. I love developing stories and breaking news. It was very stressful. And I think it really did overall take a toll on my health. I'll get into that. It was very stressful. And there were times that I would have panic attacks. I haven't really talked about it publicly, but it was really hard. And I went to the doctors about it, and the doctor said it's just stress. I was under so much stress because after my day was done, I would go home, work out, and I would still be on. I would be looking at the news for tomorrow, watching newscasts to stay up to date. And it was not just a job, it was a life.
Right. And there was no turnoff for you, right? So there was no downtime. Would you like to talk more about how, maybe like what the stressors were and how you overcame that? Because I know like you, I think you've already said this too, is that we really got to take care of ourselves in order to show up for other people. So I'd love to hear how that happened. I'm assuming there may have been a burnout, a point where you're just like, I can't do it anymore, but I'd love to hear it from your opinion.
Well, I haven't talked about this publicly, so I will let you know. It was really, I loved my job. You have to know, like, I live and breathe news and storytelling. It was so much a part of my identity, but I gave everything to that job. And those newscasts, those were my babies. And I love the people I worked with. But I was really grateful at that time. My boyfriend, who turned to my fiance, lived in a different province. So I could just focus on my work, and I didn't have a family. So it made it much easier to just focus and give everything I had to being my best and delivering my best to the people watching. But it was taking a toll on my health because I had a lot on my plate. It is a lot to juggle because I gave so much. Like, there's a way to give less and it'd be fine. But it's part of my personality to go all in. Yeah. So my husband, he got a position in Calgary. So when he applied for his residency program in medicine, he finished up his medical school. He got a position in Calgary, and it was our goal because we had been doing long distance for 6 years. It was a really long time. And we said, wherever you match for residency, I'm just going to go with you. So that's what we decided. And I think I was just ready for it. I was so tired and so stressed out, and I really wanted to be with my husband that it was just time. And so I was actually supposed to work at CTV Calgary, but a round of layoffs just 4 days before I was supposed to start meant it just never happened. And it had always been my dream to come home and tell the news, but it just didn't happen. And soon I found out I was pregnant. And I've always wanted to be a mom. It was really, really a big goal for me. So I decided not to go back and just to take care of myself, rest, and have my first baby. So that's what happened. And I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. I really wanted to do that for my girls. So I had Aurora and then I had Gwyneth. And a few years into it, I decided it was time for me to do something for myself. I wanted to reignite that passion I have for storytelling. So I thought, what am I good at? And I really prayed a lot about it. And God really told me, you're good at videography, you're good at storytelling. I think you should do that. And I had a lot of peace with it. So I decided to launch Real Awesome Productions in October of 2020. So it's almost my 1 year anniversary of launching my business. And I've grown so much. I tell you, this year has been such a year of growth. And I'm so happy that this has happened.
Yeah, that sounds so amazing. And I think that it's so cool to hear that you were going so hard and then you were so close to getting one of your dreams come true, to tell the news at your home. But you were blessed with a bigger gift too, I think, in having children and being able to be there for them, which is so amazing. And starting your own business during a pandemic, I want to hear all about that.
Yes. So I decided to, instead of being perfect, which I struggle with perfectionism. I decided I have to be brave. I got to do this for me because I feel like it's the right time. My girls are just a little bit older and I still would have the flexibility to take care of them. And I have a wonderful family support system. So whenever I do need to work, I have someone who can watch them, which is really important for me. I wanted to get to that point where someone can take care of my girls so that I can take care of my business. Right. And decided to go for it. This is something that I've been thinking of for a long time, but I faced a ton of limiting beliefs, so many, because I mentioned earlier, my parents filed for bankruptcy because they had their own business. It was a fish shop. So they sold freshwater and saltwater fish. And I grew up with that. Yeah. And then my brother had his own business and he also had to file for consumer protection. I believe that's called. It's almost like bankruptcy. So his business didn't go well either. So I thought, I'm just not good at business. I don't have a degree in business. I can't do this. Right. But I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. I want to help people tell stories. And if I can't do it through the news, I'm going to do it on my own terms. And that's why I decided to start Real Awesome Productions.
That's so amazing. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit of your perfectionism, because I can relate to that. I always want everything to be perfect. I have a really hard time with putting stuff out into the world without it being perfect. But over the last couple of years, I've really been working on that and got to a similar state like you, where it's like, I just have to get it out there and I just have to do this for myself. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing an amazing job too, Selena. So keep it up. So for myself, I'll tell you a story about perfectionism. When I was a video journalist in Yorkton, I had to do a story about a parade. So it's a simple story, but I just started in the news, and doing a reporter stand-up is so vital to start building trust and recognition with your audience. And a stand-up is when you see the reporter standing on camera and saying something. It's usually only about 10 to 15 seconds. So I only had to do 10 to 15 seconds at this parade. But as a video journalist, I had no one to look at the camera for me. It wasn't one of those flip screens. So I had no idea where I was, and I didn't have a stand to figure out my framing or my focus. So I probably shot that stand up at least 20 times, maybe 15 times. I wasted an hour and a half. Everything else was done except for this stand up. And it drove me crazy because I wanted to be perfect. I needed to be in focus, first of all. I needed to be framed properly. I needed to say the right things. And so perfectionism can really drive you crazy. And so what I teach now through Real Awesome Productions, I teach video confidence, is I want people just to try. Your first video doesn't have to be perfect, and very well, it won't be perfect. My first videos were far from perfect, but aim to be 1% better in the next video. Learn from your first video, learn from your second video. And when you do your 30th video, you're going to be so much better. When you do your 100th video, you're going to be a rock star. So just think of it as tiny increments of improvement, and you can start to relieve yourself of that perfectionism because it can be very paralyzing. And that's probably why I didn't want to start my business earlier, because I didn't think I was going to be good at it.
Right.
But because I had the courage to try, I've learned so much, not about business necessarily, but about myself. And that has been incredibly rewarding. Learning about myself and how I can grow as a better human being and as a better mom and as a better businesswoman has been so valuable.
That's awesome. I just love hearing you talk about it because you just like light up and glow, and it's so amazing to see that. I know that you're writing a book, so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that as well.
Oh, yes. This is my third baby. So I have two babies. This is my third baby, and it's a ton of work. And Lindsay Berry, the founder of YYC Fempreneurs, was my marketing coach for marketing school. And she suggested that I write this book. And the first thing that popped in my mind was, hell no one's going to want to read my book because I'm a nobody. But I really thought about it for a while, and it was really compelling. It was keeping me up at night that, I have something important to say, and I can really help a lot of people with all my experience. When I look back, I have 20 years of experience on screen and behind the camera, and even longer when I think about public speaking, like about 30 years, because I started when I was a little kid, emceeing school presentations and school concerts. So I have lots of experience, and I decided now is the time. It's been a lot of work, and I have to admit, I haven't seen my girls as much as I'd like to because mommy is writing. Mommy has a lot of work to do. There's a lot of research that goes into writing the book and making it valuable for people. So I'm very excited to share it because I really believe that what I'm going to be teaching in this book will help women to show up confidently and authentically as themselves. And just knowing that you have this amazing production studio that can fit in the palm of your hands. I'm teaching people how you can shoot with your phone and edit with just your phone and making it simple and accessible, because I really believe in just promoting more voices and more faces in the media. It goes back to that story of when I tried to be a model, but I turned out not to be model material. I waited for someone to say that I was good enough, but I want to tell people that you are good enough just as you are. Begin where you are, because you have all you need in the palm of your hands to get your word, your message, your story, your face out there. And your message is so valuable. I really believe everyone has a very important message to share with the world. And if you don't share that message, you're denying people that very special gift that you have.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I have a question off that. Like, for listeners that feel maybe like their story isn't valuable, or they're comparing it to others where I haven't experienced something as traumatic or as big as others, what is your advice to people who feel that way?
I think still there's some value in it, because there's beauty in the connection, because everyday people go through everyday experiences, whether it's frustration with raising children. You see a lot of people connecting with millions of moms who are going through the same thing, and it may not be traumatic or big, but it's still universal. And that's what makes it powerful. It's part of that human condition. So even if you don't have this big story that you think is important, you'd be surprised who thinks it is. And you can make a huge difference for that woman. If you are, for instance, like a lactation consultant, and you know what moms are going through at 3:00 in the morning, and you show up on camera and say, this is what is going through your mind. This is how I can help you. This is how we can help you and your baby get a better night's sleep. You're going to be saving that mom a lot of frustration, a lot of tears, and helping her live a better life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an awesome answer. I love that. Thank you for sharing. All right. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you do with your new company, Real Productions. Is that correct? That's what it's
Real
called.
Awesome Productions. Yeah. So what I do, actually, I'll tell you how it started. So I wanted to start it off with videography, but the more clients I had, I noticed this universal theme. And that was, they were so shy to show up on camera. But because of all my experience on camera and behind the lens, I was able to make them feel comfortable and confident telling their story. So I pivoted my business not only to include those done for you videography services, but I also include on camera coaching. So I help the business owner or the professional craft a custom script so that they can deliver it naturally and that it's impactful. And then I help them with the coaching when they're on camera so that they can show up confidently and share their brightest selves on screen. And not only do I do that, I also do, I call it video confidence coaching, where I show people how you yourself can be confident on camera so that you can learn how you can craft a compelling story, how you can do a powerful hook. And I give them the tools and techniques so that they can look confident on camera. And then I also show them how they can edit and shoot video with just their mobile phone. So I do all of that. And I also have courses as well. My Video Confidence Academy, I teach people how to be confident on camera and how they can produce videos with just their phone.
So who would you say is your ideal client?
I would say my ideal client is a big-hearted business owner or a professional who wants to look and feel confident on camera, but they're lacking that confidence and they want the tools to do it. So I am going to offer them the tools so that they can share their message with the world.
That is so important. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you would like to share before I go into my 4 final questions?
Absolutely. I'd like to say for anybody who is terrified of showing up on camera, have the courage to do it. Do it, and you can always look back and improve on what you've done. And you'd be so amazed on just the improvement by recording a video of yourself every day. Even if you don't have the courage to post it, record yourself in a video every day, because what you'll learn from it is just getting used to the way you look and sound. And that's a lot of the battle.
Awesome. That's great advice. And I think another big takeaway that I've had from our conversation so far is just do it. Get started, listen to your heart, and just do the thing that you've always wanted to do, and do it with no regrets. And it doesn't have to be perfect, which is a lot harder to do than what I'm saying, but to just take steps every day, like you said, little actions to get to where you want to be will just help you do what you want. So I think that's a great ending piece. So thank you for sharing that.
You're most welcome.
All right, so let's get into the last 4 questions. I ask these to everyone, and I always love hearing the different answers that we get. So the first one is, what is the best advice you've received and from whom?
That is a great question. I think I'd have to go back to that choosing progress over perfection. And I think I got that from Marie Forleo, who is a thought leader. She's fantastic. So I really, really believe in that just get it done. Done is better than perfect, because that is always huge for me. I've really lived in this bubble of perfection. And only when I started to believe in myself and just going for it, that I've really seen huge growth, because wanting to be perfect has stopped me from doing many things that I think I could have done a lot sooner. So I really believe in that, progress over perfection.
Awesome. That's great advice. All right, the next one. What is the worst advice you've received?
I think from an old professor that I had. He said, when I was trying to get into medicine, he said, Felicia, you're not confident. And I just really internalized that after he said, you're not confident enough. This was right before my medical school interview. And that wasn't good advice. He told me, don't wear makeup, even though I wear makeup all the time. Dress in a suit, even though that's not how I always want to dress. So I really believed in him because he was a professor I worked for, and I really, really respected what he had to say. But taking that negative opinion, that advice that you're not confident enough to do it, it was not a good thing for me, because I ended up being someone else in that medical school interview instead of myself, even though I was really sick. So it might not have helped. But I really believe that you got to be yourself, because everybody else is taken. That's some of the best advice I've actually got. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken, because there's nobody like you. Even if you might have a similar background story, your experiences are still different. And that is your superpower. And that's what sets you apart, is your experiences and your story.
That's awesome. That's like mic drop. I love that so much. That's so powerful. That's a really big statement, because you're so right. And I think it's hard for us to believe that all the time, because, you know, we have external people saying things, but it's so true that there's only one of us and we need to step into that. So I think that's great advice. And it's a great way to turn the worst advice into something good. So that's awesome. All right. The next question, and I think you'll have a little bit of an easier time answering this one, is what is some advice that you'd give your younger self or someone in the younger generation?
I was thinking about this one today, actually, and comparison is the greatest killer of joy. So when I was younger, I would always look to other people saying, wow, that person has a great job. And when I became a mom, it became harder to see other women climb this corporate ladder, where I was cleaning dirty diapers and just wishing that I could be there. But I realized that's my choice. You know, I chose to be a mom, and I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. So I have to celebrate the choices that I make and own up to them. So I think comparison is the greatest killer of joy. And your biggest competition is yourself. Oh my gosh, just all the things that I've stopped myself from doing because I didn't think that I was good enough. You know, there's so much imposter syndrome. So once you get rid of that imposter syndrome, I mean, it'll always creep back, but you got to just kick it to the curb. You can accomplish so much. When you believe in yourself, wow, the possibilities are endless. And I really, really, really believe in that.
That's awesome. I love that advice. I hope people are writing this down, because that was like, these answers are like golden nuggets. All right. I love the answers. Like, they're just so empowering. The last one I have for you is, what are you most grateful for in life?
I'm really grateful that God, I really am grateful for God and what he has blessed me with. You know, the challenges that I have faced looking different growing up, and being in, not growing up rich, but growing up paycheck to paycheck, all that has been a blessing, because it's changed who I was. And it's really shaped my personality and the way I treat people. I've been blessed with a wonderful family, and that's huge. So God has really just given me blessing over blessing, and I've been able to live some of my dreams. You know, I have to say this, that when I was younger, I really wanted to go on an adventure, just like Frodo in Lord of the Rings. I wanted it so badly because I was just itching for something new. And then soon after, I remember being in church, and God spoke to the pastor. I hadn't told anyone I got my first job in Yorkton. And he said, Felicia, God just told me that you got a job and you're going to be moving far away. And wherever you go, you're going to be a light. And that just moved me. Like, God knows. I've been so blessed to do what I get to do. And I get to, make a living from it and meet incredible people all over the country. And now here at home, and I just want to make that difference for other people and serve them with the gifts that I've been given.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Felicia, for joining me today and being so open and vulnerable with us. I really enjoyed hearing your story and some of your different challenges, but the best part is how you've overcome them and how you're constantly working to be better and do better in this world. So thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a delight to get to know you better.
Well, thank you so much, Selena, for this opportunity to just share my story and making it so comfortable for me to just be open with you. And I really hope that the people watching and the people listening will learn something from my story and just be inspired that, by being you, you can really make a difference.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That was so amazing. I have enjoyed talking to Felicia so much. I've related to her story personally so much through the perfectionism and different challenges that she has gone through as well. I hope that it was helpful to you guys as well. I always enjoy doing these interviews, and I'm so excited that now you can actually see what we look like on my YouTube channel. And if you have the time, it would be great to leave a comment on this episode and like and subscribe and do all of the things, as it just shows me that what I'm putting out there into the world is actually making a difference. And so that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have a story that you would like to share, I would love for you to send me a message so we can chat about it. I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast. And yeah, like I said, other than that, that's it for me. I'm very passionate about helping others share their stories and help others through that as well. So bye for now.